Good evening, everyone. I hope you're well and you've had a good day. It's been really, really hot here in the UK, by UK standards, that is. I know there's many hotter places in the world. Not sure I'd cope that well, to be honest with you. I love the sun and I love really nice weather. I think it cheers us all up a bit rather than the rain. And I've lived in lots of different places, lived in Scotland right up in the north for 10 years, and there's some truth in the weather about Scotland, that it rains, but not quite as much as everyone would say it is. I think the biggest problem for me was the midges, which drive you absolutely crazy. When I worked on a project in Fort Augustus, which is at the bottom of Loch Ness. If anyone knows, Loch Ness is 25 miles long. It's about a mile wide. It is deep at its widest point, and it's an amazing place. And for a number of years, we rented a bungalow right on the side of Loch Ness, literally in 5 acres, with a couple of beaches, a boat mooring, and it was absolutely spectacular. And the change in the scenes on Loch Ness were just incredible, and the boats going up and down. Some of the owners who we got to know, and it was amazing. The wildlife was absolutely spectacular. I tell the story to people about when we lived there, that we had no mains water, and our water came off the mountain, which was about a mile up the hillside, up the mountainside. So the pipe went from our double garage, where there was a big holding tank, went under the A82 and then up the mountainside, and then sat in what was a waterfall, which was absolutely amazing. The water was really peaty, but just really great. And the water would come down the pipe, across under the road and into the holding tank, and then there were filters and an IV for taking out particles and any germs or anything. But it was absolutely spectacular, except in the summer when it dried out, and in the winter when it froze. And then occasionally we'd get the odd situation where we'd run out of water, and my wife would say, we're out of water. So I'd have to traipse up the mountainside, no matter whether it was day or night, to find out what the blockage was. Usually it was leaves, but there was one particular occasion, it was late in the day and we'd run out of water, the tank had emptied, so I'd troops up the mountain, and as I got, I don't know, 100 yards away, I could smell this putrid smell that was absolutely revolting. And the nearer I got, the worse it got. And as I looked, I could see the end of the pipe, and sticking out of the end of the pipe were a couple of legs which weren't human. It was a frog or a toad, which had obviously somehow managed to come down and get wedged into the pipe and couldn't get back out again. So I had to prise it out with a stick. But the smell was just, ugh, I can't even imagine what it must be with dead bodies, if that's what a frog smells like. So anyway, a little bit of history about Scotland, but it is an amazing place. I absolutely adore Scotland, and the scenery on the west coast and north coast is just spectacular. And down on the Isles of Lewis, the beaches at Euston, places like that are just absolutely beautiful, breathtaking. The water is beautifully clear, but amazingly freezing cold as well. And I know on one holiday that we had, I had a friend who had a mobile home right on the waterside, and my daughter and I went swimming under duress, and I think we both came out pretty blue at the end of it and absolutely frozen cold, but it was an experience. But then we had to contend with the midges after that, or the chicken stealing seagulls off the barbecue. But if you live in the UK, or if you live overseas, or wherever it might be, and you ever get the opportunity to go to Scotland, I would highly recommend going. Honestly, you have to see some of the scenery to believe it. So that was that. I had a day, well, I didn't have a day off work today. I just worked from home today. I had hideous hay fever yesterday. I hate even admitting it. It was like a dripping tap, and I was completely blocked up, worked through a very busy day, but today I thought, blow it, I'm the boss. I'm going to work from home today. and this is how I work from home. Not all the time, but most of the time. I started 4 new employees recently, one who's an ex-lawyer of 39 years, someone who, a lady used to have an inventory company I've known for about 7 years, and then 2 ladies who had not been involved in property at all. But one of those ladies I got really close to, friendship. We have a real bond. She's absolutely lovely. And this week, or maybe it was last week. Last week, I shut the office door because it was open because it was so hot in the office, and just said, I want to tell you something really personal. So I went on to tell her that I was transgender, and to explain, what I've been through, what I'm going through, and maybe what I will go through in the future at some stage. And showed her a couple of photos, and I think she was quite surprised, looked at the old boy that she was working with, and then looked at the photos and seemed to be quite surprised, and was very complimentary. So I will take all the compliments I can get. So thank you for that. And I'm not going to say what her name is, but she knows exactly who she is because she will probably watch this. And I just, she's very patient and tolerant of me, because I think I bombard her a bit. She must find it a little bit odd that I'm her boss, and yet I don't treat anyone as my employees. I treat them as my friends, because they are. And everyone that works for me, not so much the newer ones, but certainly the ones that have been with me for some time, know about me. And we have an amazing love relationship, and they're absolutely great. Couldn't be better, to be honest with you. But the new young lady, go on, Emily, I'll say your name because I know you might watch this, so you know I'm talking about you. Anyway, I hope you don't mind. But I started a book probably 1.5 years ago, and it was on the similar theme to one of my previous videos, which is to do with, can you be transgender and a professing Christian as well? Is that an oxymoron? Well, I don't believe it is categorically, and I would contest with anyone who is a professing Christian relating to that. And I think the verse that I probably pray every morning without fail is the word of God himself, where it says, all that come unto me, I will in no wise cast out. And there are so many hymns. There's one that says, just as I am, without one plea, and that thy blood was shed for me. I find there's many of those old hymns which are absolutely amazing, which bring back really, really fond memories for me of a time gone by, and often bring me to tears. Things like, there is a fountain filled with blood drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunged beneath that flood lose all their guilty stains. And those things are really, really important to me, and have been for, I don't know, I've been converted now probably about 25 years. Attended a pretty well strict Baptist chapel in Sussex, and loved it, and loved all the people, and still do. Love my pastor, who's passed away now, but he was dearly beloved. He was like a father figure to me. But there are those within the church who, I'd say through ignorance and maybe a form of arrogance as well to some degree, would contest against me. And I've been called demon possessed, as I might have said before. And recently I did a walk up on Salisbury Plain, one of my favourite places up there. It's absolutely beautiful. And it was an amazing morning. It was beautiful and sunny, and yet it was really, really cold. There'd been a heavy frost, and the clouds were sitting down in what I'd say was the valley over Westbury, and it was just amazing. And I took photos and I posted up one particular photo on Facebook, and I put on with it the verse in the Psalms which says, I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord. And I think that, maybe people can contest with me and say you can't be transgender and a professing Christian as well. But I would wholly and categorically disagree with them, because, I didn't choose to be born as a trans woman, as transgender. It wasn't something that I just said, this is what I'm going to be, this is what I want to be. Like if you read every story about transgender people, whether male or female, the stories all have exactly the same theme to them, that it was in childhood that they knew that there was something different about them. And it was the same for me. I guess I was probably, about 5 years old. And I think many other transgender people have felt exactly the same. And, children do sin. I know that. I was not a great child. I was badly behaved and put my children through misery. But I think when it comes to things like transgender issues, that's a really different thing entirely. And, you can't call that a sin. It would be like saying to someone who was who had Asperger's or autistic, who was anything at all, some form of bodily deformity, and saying, if you've got this bodily deformity, you can't be a follower of God. You're not one of God's children. But that would be absolutely rubbish, of course, because God's allowed a child or a person to be born with these particular ailments, conditions, whatever they are. And being transgender is no different to any other one of these things. And, I contest anyone that thinks otherwise. But God allowed this into my life for whatever reason. And I probably question that virtually every day, why he did. And I know that God is all powerful, he's all able. There is nothing beyond his ability. I know he's perfect and he doesn't make mistakes. So hence why when someone is born with a bodily deformity, whether it's a condition or something, it isn't that God's made a mistake. It's just that that's what God chose to give that particular person for whatever reason it might be. It would be like, the case of, some of them will have heard of Joni Eareckson Tada, who dived into a swimming pool and broke her neck and ended up, I think, as a quadriplegic, but has been an amazing advocate for the Word of God. And, she's just an incredible person. God allowed that into her life, allowed her to suffer in such a way, and yet out of all of that suffering, there shone a great light. She does amazing work. So there is something in all of these things. And I don't know, for me, what my purpose in life is. I don't know what God has planned for me even now in later life. I've written a number of books and I've taken services, I've preached, Sunday school superintendent. I'd like to think that I was a good father while I had my children, and gave them a really happy life until that dreaded moment. But that's the way it is. Being transgender is definitely not a choice. And, you can be a professing Christian and transgender as well. I pray every day for those in my life. Those are my family, my friends, those who work with me and work for me. Every day I pray for them, because I thank God for them. They've been a massive, huge support for me. And in truth, I wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for them. I've told you about the attempted suicides, the being at Maytree in North London, for 5 days, being counselled, because my suicide tendencies, because of being transgender. If I could just click my fingers and stop today, then yeah, would I? I don't know, because actually I sit on the cusp of bodily being male, mentally being female. I was talking to Emily yesterday about this, and I said that, how can you understand these things? How can you understand these inner feelings that you have, that you endure and have to go through? How can you imagine, this body of a man have the feelings of a woman? Things like being maternal and wanting children. How bizarre is that? How do you explain those things? They are just an absolute paradox, a mystery. And I know I would never find the answer in this life. I know that being transgender is till death I do part. And it's something I will take with me. Yes, I am transitioning, as I've told you before, and been on hormone therapy for just over 2 years now. And yeah, the plan is at some stage to have gender confirmation surgery, and I live day by day. Every day I long for it, and I long to be who I really am. Emily and my colleague Natalie, who's one of my dearest friends, who work for me and work with me, would welcome me to walk into my office, into my own business as Charlotte. And I sent them each a photo of a dress I bought, a work dress, which would be the one that I would wear the first day that I walk into that office. I've had my business cards printed with my name, Charlotte Eden Hemingway, on them, not as a director, but as my role, what I do in the business. And one day that day will come, and it will be, I'll be petrified, in truth. I'm absolutely petrified. Walking out of the door's hard at some stages. My anxiety just goes through the ceiling. To actually drive to my office in my car, where so many people know me. And I don't say that arrogantly. I just mean so many people know me. Clients, ex-clients, friends, people, just people that know me. And to actually come out in public as who I really am would be probably a bit of a bombshell, to be honest with you. Few people I've told, ex-clients and so on, but to actually come out and just walk into that office as Charlotte, as I am now, but obviously was wearing something different, will be an absolute milestone. But it's on the radar, and that's part of my plan, and that's part of my journey. And I know that probably there are many others, trans women out there, who are maybe at the same stage as me, but fear the going out, and fear the ridicule and the words of other people, what they might say. There's another verse in the Bible that says, the fear of man bringeth a snare. Well, the fear of man and woman bringeth a snare. And it frightens us in natural life, but it definitely does as being a trans woman. Well, I think that's about that. I was going to read you another portion from the book. So anyway, how long have I've been talking for 19 minutes. It was only 16 minutes when I did a reading yesterday. So sorry, you've had to endure 20 minutes of me doing one of my sort of talks, openings up, whatever you want to call it. So I probably won't read a lot out of the book tonight, but I'll read a passage, and I hope you enjoy it. And again, I will apologise for the mistakes that I make when reading. But anyway, I'm sure you'll understand, and I'm sure that you'll get the gist of it. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this. So we finished off where Charlotte was saying in the last paragraph, I hate myself for who and what I am and what I have done. And It isn't the transitioning, it's to do with the pain that she had inflicted upon family, really close family, even my own children and my wife. And that will never go. That is part of my life, that's part of who I am, that's part of the pain that I have to bear, and probably part of the pain that they will have to bear for a lifetime, until maybe one day they will accept me for who I am. I live in the hope and I pray about it every day. So let's read on. Charlotte could feel herself once again breaking down. She would grind her teeth and tighten every muscle in her face and body to overcome the terror and tears that she knew would come. Her eyes began to fill with tears, and the lump in her throat grew and grew until she could no longer speak. She quickly looked down in her torment and pain, clenching her fists so that she could not look at the gaze of the therapist. She immediately began to look around the room to distract her mind and thoughts, to erase the tears and brokenness. She reached for the tissue box and apologised to the therapist for taking one. She felt guilty that she was crying and using something that was not hers, something that she seemed to have no right to. The breakdowns were a regular occurrence. Some had been virtually catastrophic, even having to dial 999 on one occasion, as she had a major breakdown and was at the point of suicide. She recalled back that Sunday evening while staying in her friend's cottage, about a month after her life falling apart. It was about a month after the breakdown of the marriage and having to leave the family home, and her having to grab a few essential items, but leaving her life and her world behind. Would she ever return there again, or was this to be the last time she would ever see it again? Her friends were at church. She hadn't gone as she could not cope. She spent most of the services in tears and would have to rush out before anyone attempted to speak with her. She had only been to a few services, and it was utterly painful for her. She felt like all eyes were on her, judging her, even despising her. Her paranoia would set in, and she would see everyone as her enemies and not as her fellow worshippers, and some as even friends. She knew it was utter madness, but it was the way that her mind was working. This particular day had been torturous. Numbers of things had happened. Her sister and husband had driven to see her and to see how she was doing. It was about a 3-hour round trip for them. After they left, things began to fall apart for her. Everything came crashing in upon her. She felt completely overwhelmed. She could not contain her emotions and was breaking apart. Her breathing became disjointed and began to labour to get her breath. Her heart was pounding and she was sweating profusely and became very light-headed. She felt like she was dying and about to have a heart attack. Suicide began to scream at her, and she dragged herself to the cupboard where she had hidden a hazelnut bar. She had a serious nut allergy, and hazelnuts would be fatal for her, as they had nearly been before. Last time it occurred, the paramedics had saved her life when she was on the brink of death. She had always vowed that she would never commit suicide in her friend's cottage. That would be too cruel. They'd been too good to her. She had planned everything. She would drive to the hills in the Quantocks and do it there, away from everyone. It was her favourite walking, sitting spot, and she felt it would be utterly fitting place to pass from the pain of this world and her life into death. She adored the solitude and peace and wanted the peace of eternity, an escape from herself and from being transgender. She would often quote audibly and in her own head that, like the vows at the wedding, it was till death do us part. She knew that death was the only way to conquer ending being transgender. She had never seen her life as anything other than torture and survival of lying, betraying, pretending to be one thing when she was so far different to that portrayal. The pain was so deep and painful of a wasted life and time that it tore her apart. It seemed to her to be one of the biggest things in her life that ripped her in pieces. She could see her wife's face, the children, their faces in pain, and she'd done it to them. She was the cause of their suffering. She'd inflicted this unfair pain upon them and into their lives. She'd broken their hearts and tore their lives apart as she had done to herself. What a mess, what a disaster. She wanted to just scream, and she'd done that many, many times before. I hate who and what I am and what I have done to so many people in my life. I don't want to be transgender. I'm not one thing or another. I don't see myself as either male or female. But if someone was to say today that you could be male or female, I would choose female because I know that I am. Charlotte spoke at last in a sad and low voice. Her throat had dried out from trying to control her emotions and to hold back the floodgates of her tears. I'll stop there. Anyway, I hope you all have a good evening. Here in the UK, it is, I'm not sure what time. My guess is probably around 7 o'clock. The nights don't draw in until probably about 9:30. I've been out and watered my vegetables, which are looking pretty sad and dried out, and I'm not sure that some of them will survive. But anyway, I live in hope. Keep watering them and doing what I need to do with them. So I hope you all sleep well, and tomorrow that you all have a really good day. Anyway, till we meet again, God bless. Bye.